As I prepare this lesson, we are in the midst of a global health pandemic and a nationwide uproar over the killings of 3 black people in the span of just 3 months. One by white vigilantes and the other 2 by white police officers. It was the killing of the 3rd victim, George Floyd in Minneapolis, that sparked a national outrage and calls for racial reconciliation. Such callous disregard for black bodies did not arise in a vacuum, nor is it limited to the United States. Anti-black racism has a long history and deep roots in one of the most misquoted and misused passages in the entire Bible, Genesis 9:18-27. Let us begin with the first 2 verses. The sons of Noah, who went out of the ark, were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These 3 were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. According to chapter 9, after the great flood, Shem settled the lands east of Canaan. Ham populated Canaan in Africa, while Japheth colonized Asia Minor and Europe. Continuing with verse 20, Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward to cover the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, Now let's stop here for a moment. Ham inadvertently walked in on his drunk father, sprawled out naked in his tent. Seems innocent enough, right? But according to the text, rather than looking away and covering Noah to protect his honor, Ham told his brothers, who then covered their father without looking. Certainly this was an innocent mistake. But once Noah learned what had happened, he pronounced a curse. According to a popular belief that has been passed down for generations by people who never bother to actually read the Bible, Noah cursed Ham since he was the offender. But what does the text say? Cursed be Canaan, lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers. The text is clear. Noah cursed his grandson Canaan, not his son Ham. And to add insult to injury, Noah declared that Canaan would be a slave, subservient to his uncles and their descendants. All for something Canaan had nothing to do with. According to an age-old interpretation, largely disseminated by Bible-believing Christians, those from Africa got their black skin as a direct result of Noah's curse. Now, keeping in mind that it was Canaan who was cursed and not Ham, it is important to point out that the descendants of Canaan are not black. Canaanites were brown-skinned, like all Mediterranean peoples, including the Israelites themselves. This ancient depiction of a Canaanite man is visual proof of this. Even the nation of Egypt, descendants of Canaan's brother Mitzrayim, had both a black and brown-skinned population. Egyptians from Lower Egypt in the north tended to be brown-skinned, while those in Upper Egypt to the south were black. Moreover, despite these differences in skin color, there is not a single shred of evidence for any sort of racial prejudice among the Egyptians, or among any other ancient people for that matter. Anti-black racism began in Europe in the 15th century AD and spread throughout the world with the growth of the slave trade. The bottom line? Noah never cursed Ham, and his curse of Canaan had nothing to do with skin color. The rationale for the curse was political. This map shows the Egyptian Empire from 1550 to 1150 BC, when Egypt controlled the land of Canaan to the north. Genesis 9 reflects this 400-year period of Egyptian political and economic control. One can further see on this map why Egypt and Canaan would have been regarded as brothers, and the two of them as sons of Ham, given that Egypt is part of the continent of Africa. Even more to the point, what you see on this map is how things looked in the time of Moses, when the Israelites were poised to conquer the land of Canaan under Joshua. So why then did Noah condemn his grandson Canaan to a life of slavery, when it was his father Ham who walked in on his father? Two biblical texts provide us with an explanation. In Genesis 15, God tells Abram that his offspring will be oppressed for 400 years. This is a clear reference to Israel's captivity in Egypt as recounted in the book of Exodus. God then says that they, meaning the Israelites, shall come back here, the land of Canaan, in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites, another name for the Canaanites, is not yet complete. In other words, Israel will be set free from bondage in Egypt and will return to the land of Canaan when the time is ripe to punish the Canaanites for their idolatry and sinfulness. Deuteronomy 9:5 reminds the Israelites of this as they get ready to enter the land of Canaan. This is the reality. Noah's curse of Canaan provides the rationale for the later divine charge to wipe out the Canaanites during Joshua's conquest and to enslave those who survived. Joshua 12:13 and other passages do indeed indicate that Israel enslaved those Canaanites who were not slaughtered, an immoral act from our modern perspective, but in the biblical view, a result of God's judgment on the Canaanites for their iniquity. Even with this explanation, though, the biblical justification is still difficult for a modern person to accept, much less condone. To be honest, stories like this make living with an ancient text like the Bible difficult in a modern world. However, one mark of a mature faith is an ability to live with questions, and to do so in ways that, while they might make us feel uncomfortable, do not cause us to jettison our faith. The pressing issue for us today, however, is that no matter what one might think about the biblical perspective, none of this removes the stain of our own injustices. Christian teaching, long before America's founding, used Scripture to justify the enslavement of Africans. Even in more recent times, respected Christian leaders like Dr. Lewis Talbot, the second and fourth president of Biola University, and the namesake of Talbot Theological Seminary, held such views. The most quoted verse in this regard, and one that continues to be cited by white supremacists and Christian nationalists, is Genesis 9:27. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. Since Japheth was regarded as the ancestor of the Europeans, English colonists viewed themselves as descendants of Japheth and therefore the rightful owners of the black slave race. Even after slavery was abolished after the Civil War, people continued using the Bible to enact and justify Jim Crow laws in the South, based in large part on the continued belief that black skin color was the result of Noah's curse. And it wasn't just in the South. Racial prejudice thrived and continues to thrive in the North as well. not even civil rights legislation in the 1960s, or the election of America's first black president in 2008, has been able to uproot the deep-seated hate and bigotry against people of color, regardless of their ethnicity. But change can happen, and it begins in the heart. If we are to take Genesis 1:27 seriously, then every man, woman, and child, the world over, are God's creation and image bearers worthy of freedom, dignity, and respect.